Good morning. I'd like to call the September meeting of the Kansas State Board of Education to order and to say welcome to everyone in attendance today. I'd especially like to recognize Dr. Jim Porter from Fredonia, who will be serving with all of you after the first of the year, and I know you'll enjoy getting to know him. And also Dr. Mary Skaggs from Baker University. Mary has been wonderful over the years in bringing her education students to our meetings so they will get a little idea of what the State Board of Education does. With her today is student Renata Dill. Did I say your first name correctly? So welcome. We're glad you're here. And all members of our board are present. The mission of the State Board of Education is to prepare Kansas students for lifelong success through rigorous quality academic instruction, career training, and character development according to each student's gifts and talents. Now I would ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business today will be to approve our agenda, but we do have an amendment to add 4 contract extensions to consent item 16K, continuation grants for safe and supportive schools. These vendors provide intervention services to grantees. Copies of the requested action are in each board member's folder. So I would ask for a motion to amend consent item 16K to add contract extensions for 4 vendors providing intervention services. Do I hear a motion? Moved by Kathy Bush, seconded by Dina Horst. Is there discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. I see 10 hands in the air, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, we need to approve our August minutes. Is there a motion to approve those? Moved by Steve Roberts, seconded by Carolyn Campbell. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. 10-0. We are ready now for our commissioner's report.
Good morning, everybody. I had several things just to give you a brief update on. So one thing I did is you'll see in front of you just kind of a bulleted list of a few things I want to update you on. The first one is the Safe and Prepared Schools proposal. You have also in front of you a copy of a proposal that was given to the governor's office staff yesterday. And I had mentioned this a few months ago. We've had in Kansas for several years a Safe and Prepared Schools grant. We've also have had services and trainings provided to school districts. A lot of that funding's running out. The person, Dr. Bob Hull, that used to oversee that, is no longer in Kansas. So about last June, the Adjunct General's Office, the Kansas Highway Patrol, and our staff came together to draft a proposal to move forward in Kansas with a Safe and Prepared Schools initiative. I just wanted you to have a copy of it. It was important for those three departments, Highway Patrol, the Adjunct General's Office, and this agency, that someone needs to take a lead role in safe and prepared schools across Kansas. All the trainings, the annual conferences, everything from active shooters to tornadoes to crisis management planning. It was decided by those three groups that it made sense that this agency would take the lead role in that. And if you look in the proposal, I'm not going to read through it. I just wanted you to have a copy of it. But those three groups put together a very well-planned, detailed 5-year proposal to go to the governor's office to where we could have the funds to hire a director, an assistant director, assistants with the budget to be able to continue a lot of the really good work that's been going on in Kansas around safe and prepared schools. So I just wanted you to have a copy of that proposal. The Adjunct General, Colonel Garcia from the Highway Patrol, and myself met with the governor's staff yesterday and handed this proposal off. So, and we've been meeting several times throughout the summer. So I just wanted you to have a copy of that proposal. The second thing I just wanted to update you on, and you have a copy of the letter from Assistant Secretary Deb Delisle from the U.S. Department of Ed approving Kansas's extension waiver. Just to remind everybody that every state that submitted a waiver back in 2011, the waivers are not intended to be long-term. It's intended that if states wanted to move forward in some areas, that we could receive some relief from No Child Left Behind, hoping that Congress would eventually reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. That was supposed to be done in 2007. It has yet to be done, but every state that submitted a waiver like Kansas did back in 2011, they were only good for 2 years. And the U.S. Department, so they all expired June 30th of this past summer. Kansas, we wanted to keep moving forward with a lot of initiatives. We submitted an extension request for the 14-15 school year, and it was approved. There were some key things, though, that we amended in our waiver that was also approved, and the biggest one is they removed Kansas's high-risk definition that was on our waiver, and that was all around how Kansas chose to use student growth as a significant factor in a teacher leader's evaluation. And I got a lot of gratitude and thanks goes out to all the people in the field that continue to push, to Diane for digging her heels in, and really for Kansas, because we said in the beginning it will not be based off one test, and we will not say it's a percent. It's 50%, 40%. I believe Kansas was very innovative in the method that we wanted to say if a teacher or a building principal, there's multiple ways that they can show that their students are growing in performance. That's what we wanted to do. U.S. Department of Ed finally understood our approach. They've approved it, and they removed our high-risk status. So we'll be very aggressive this year now in rolling out how that looks. They also approved that we would not use growth in performance in anybody's evaluation until the 17-18 school year. So we have 3 years to work on it, 3 years to look at what data looks like and how it's applied. So we were approved to push that back to the 17-18 school year. They also approved that we had asked that we be exempt. If you remember at the July board meeting, this board voted that we did not want to do any student or building reporting of the 2014 state assessment results, and they approved that we don't have to do that. So that later this morning you will hear from our assessment team what CETE is providing to schools so they know how their students did perform on certain concepts and items, but we will not be doing the traditional building report cards, student level report cards. So they did approve this board's request that we not do those reports. The thing that they did not approve, and we will get into more detail, Scott Smith and Beth Foltz later this morning, we call it the bouquet, that at the high school level the kid could take a state assessment, or if they had already demonstrated college readiness with the ACT or the SAT, that was not approved. It really made us go back to the table and rethink what we were wanting to do, and you'll see later this morning we believe we even have a better model that we want to do in Kansas, and we'll explain the details of that later on. But the great news is our waiver extension request was approved. They removed our high-risk status, and we're ready to continue to move forward. Along that lines, in Kansas, we revise our standards every 7 years. This board adopted our math and English language arts standards in 2010. We're just a few months away from the year 2015. So our normal cycle would be in the next, about a year from now, we will start looking at pulling our teachers, our college professors, our curriculum leaders, our normal process of our standards revision teams around math and English language arts. That'll be occurring in the near future. What we wanted to do, and we're looking at something that we haven't done in the past because we really never had the need for it, but getting out early. Starting maybe this December, January, we're looking at putting our standards out there, and for a year in advance, giving Kansans the opportunity to take a real good look at our standards and tell us, how do you believe we can make them better? Is it too rigorous at this grade level? Do we need to add something at this grade level? So for a year in advance, start taking some public comments on our standards and let people give us their good advice on how they believe we can improve them. That way, once we bring those committees of Kansas educators together to start looking at revising our standards, they can start out with some input from the field. So we are looking at creating a portal, a website, a process for us to be able a year in advance to start getting input from Kansans, parents, business people, well in advance. It'd be something new, but to get out early and just start getting some public comment on how we can improve our standards. The second to the last thing I had, we're continuing and we're about to finalize the team that we're pulling together with post-secondary to have a pre-K through 16 task force. We're just Board of Regents will be sending us here in the next few days a couple names of some higher ed individuals to serve on that committee. We have a couple superintendents, a couple principals, teacher, early childhood, special education, but we're pulling together 13 to 16 individuals that span pre-K through post-secondary to start the conversation of what are their goals, what are our board's goals, what can we come to maybe some agreement or commonalities of what it is that we all want pre-K through 16, start backward mapping to be able to look at more of a seamless pre-K through 16 focus on what is it that we all want. So I'm just waiting on the last two names. As soon as we get those, then we'll get a date set to bring that group in and just start having the conversation about what is it that Kansas needs from pre-K through 16. The last thing I just wanted to bring to your attention, I believe it's in your packet. There's a kind of fancy looking or bright colored, just to remind you that the annual conference is October 20th through 22nd, so make sure that you saw that. Some of you, I think, are already registered, but just a reminder that that's right around the corner. And with that, if there's any questions.
Are there questions for Brad? I had one. I really like the plan for getting public input on the standards as we move forward, to look at them and update them and revise them. I just wonder what thought has been given to how we will get the message out there to the public that their input is important and we want their participation. I think that was one of the issues last time. We thought we had communicated well, but a lot of people weren't aware of what was happening. So,
great question. We'll do media releases. We'll reach out, for example, to like the Kansas Learning First Alliance that makes up a broad representative of stakeholders across the state. We're looking for any input. This is a new process that we normally don't start getting input until after the team has come together, has started revising standards, putting things out for public comment. But we'll be looking at our normal media releases, but again, reaching out to school districts, to the PTA, Learning First Alliance. They're always there saying, how can we help you? And this would be a great vehicle for us to be able to really let people in Kansas know that we want your input, and even give them a process and walk them through the best ways or strategies to go in and view and look at, start at grade levels, start at bands, but it'll be it's something new, but we think that it'll be a good proactive way to be able to really get input from our stakeholders across Kansas of how we can make them better.
thank you. I think it's a great idea. Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also like the idea of the advance input before the revision. I just wanted to clarify, or for you to clarify, that the revisions that we are going to do will be in Kansas alone, right? Mm-hmm. Not in collaboration with other states, which has caused a lot of consternation with the standards. So it'll be just our normal process. Is that correct?
Correct. They around conversations with commissioners from other states and CCSSO or chief state school officers, no one has really addressed how that might look in the future. If they have conversations about ways that other states want to work together, that would definitely be something that would be your decision if you would want to participate in that. But our plan right now is through our normal process of our Kansas teams sitting down and taking the standards adopted in 2010 and look at how can we approve them, how can we adjust them. And that's because we don't know of any other process being discussed with other states working together.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm assuming that no two states are on the same cycle for revision or review of the standards, and we're on a statutory cycle, so we do that every 7 years. So
Correct.
I would strongly encourage us to just do the work ourselves and not be open to any multi-state collaboration.
And I agree, and it's so early because, we're more than a year out of even bringing the teams in. We just thought it'd be a good time because we can see it out our windshield. We're almost into our 5th year of these standards. We just want to get some input from Kansans well in advance of letting us know how we can improve them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Then we will move into our Citizens Open Forum. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. That always makes us happy. I now declare the Citizens Open Forum of the Kansas State Board of Education meeting open at 10:20 a.m. The State Board provides this opportunity for citizens to share views about topics of interest or issues currently being considered by the State Board. The State Board asks that speakers identify themselves by name and the name of the group they represent if applicable. The State Board also asks that each speaker focus their remarks on issues or topics. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. Any board questions will be for clarification. Our first speaker is Terry Collins.
Back to the blue light special. Can you hear me? It's blue. Okay. Maybe I just need it to be a little closer. Okay. I am Terry Collins. I am the legislative representative for the Kansas Association of Special Ed Administrators. I'm also the director of special education at Doniphan County Education Cooperative. I came here a month ago to bring you what I thought was very good news about how well the emergency safety interventions have been implemented over the last year, and that there were very, very few parental concerns, 3 as a matter of fact, and all 3 were resolved using the process. I did get a sense from you when I was here last time that there was some type of an urgent need to develop an appeals process, and I was concerned about that, so I began to try to do some research and figure out why that is. I talked to people from USA, from KSDE, from the Special Ed Advisory Council, and from the Kansas Department of Education, and nobody was aware of any information that would cause an immediate need for an appeal process. The DRC had reported to you, I went back and watched some of the other archive films, have reported to you on a number of occasions that there were many, many specific complaints that parents had, but they're not passing those on to the districts, to the interlocals, to any organization that has asked for assistance. For example, KSDE, they've repeatedly asked that DRC share those complaints so that they can help mediate a problem. After the last meeting, I did talk with the DRC And I suggested the same thing. If you're receiving complaints out there, we need to know about that. And the KSDE organization would be very happy to sit down with you and any parents to talk about any concerns that they might have regarding the emergency safety regulations. I didn't get much of a response out of them. And I went to the SEAC meeting on August 22nd, and they requested also from DRC that they share some of the data of the concerns. You've commissioned the SEAC to develop an appeal process, but they don't have any information. They don't have any complaints to go on. They don't have any factual information about the complaints that are being received by other areas. You know, I do want to tell you, too, that KSDE has total confidence in the local Board of Education's ability to implement these regulations. And only once last year did the dispute resolution reach the board of one district. Okay. The other two concerns were resolved in the principal's office. So how am I doing on time anyway? Okay. 1 minute. Okay, so I would like to say to you that in talking to all of the major organizations that we can't find these people that are complaining. We can't find an urgent sense for an appeal process. So in summary, there doesn't appear to be a crisis out there. So if you look on the back, there are 4 things that I would like to point out to you in summary. That agencies should work together. And if one agency is aware of some problems, they should share that with the pertinent agencies. I'd also any appeal process that you do come up with should avoid adversarial relationships between all the agencies that work so hard to make this a success. Any revisions should not be based on anecdotal information, but rather on factual information. Who are these calls coming from? What is the nature of the calls? How many of them are there? And then you have something, at least in my humble opinion, to develop an appeals process for. And then the last thing is that I just want to say again that KSDE is aware of no data that suggests a need for an amendment at this time. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Oh, Ken Willard.
I would like to ask the presenter a question, if I could, for clarification. Sir, is it your position and the position of your the organization you represent that there's no need for an appeals process?
I think what my opinion is, and the opinion of the organization, is that currently there's not enough data out there to develop an appeals process. This regulation has been in effect for 1 year only. There have been 3 parental concerns reported to the directors and 1 to the State Department of Education. And so at some point, there may be a need for an appeals process. I'm not saying that there never will be. What I'm saying right now is that if we're going to build an appeal process, let's build it on some factual information.
And it's not your view that that's what's happening?
Well, I'll tell you, yeah, that's my view. That's
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Paul Faber, followed by Phoebe Wrinkle.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I am Paul Faber, and I'm with HeartSpring out of Wichita. And I think I spoke to you last in the summer of 2013. And I wanted to just give you an update on the HeartSpring efforts to become fully compliant with emergency safety intervention regulations. If you recall the last time we talked, I had informed you that HeartSpring was not in compliance with ESA regulations at that point. Since that time, we've been in communication with the Department of Education staff, and we've had a number of meetings with them. These meetings have resulted in a plan of action that developed, and along with a timetable that was agreeable with that departmental staff. I'm happy to say that we've completed all those steps in the plan of action and that Hart Spring is now fully ESI compliant. The steps that we have taken as part of the process includes having attended a number of SEAC meetings, attended a number of tasks and trainings. We've actually had tasks and staff on our campus providing training to our staff. We have had several internal workforces to address specific areas of noncompliance. And in late August, we had the Kansas Learning Center conduct a needs assessment of our school. The end result is that Hart Spring no longer engages students in a prone or supine restraint, and that all of our policies are now fully compliant from an ESI perspective. I want to thank former Commissioner DeBacker for her support. I also want to thank Special Education Director Colleen Riley and her staff for working with us in developing the plan of action and the timelines. I want to thank the Tassin organization for their coaching and for their training. And I want to thank the Kansas Learning Network for their assessment that they recently conducted. I also want to thank you, the Kansas Board of Education, for your support. Many of you took the time to visit the Hart Spring campus and to follow up with us during this process. Your visits, support, and interest is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Bush, did you have a question?
I'd like to thank Paul and the folks at Hart Springs, as obviously you've worked very hard to come in compliance with these regulations, so we appreciate your hard work also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Phoebe Wrinkle, followed by Dr. John Morton.
Good morning. My name is Phoebe Wrinkle, and I'm with TASN and the TASN Kansas In-Service Training System, or KITS project, that specifically supports preschoolers by providing technical assistance and training to the adults that work with them. In partnership with our colleagues, we have supported implementation of the Kansas ESI regulations through development of informational resources, materials, and training. We've helped early childhood professionals recognize that the ESI regulations are all about prevention and ensuring that the adults that work with young children understand how the regulations affect their day-to-day practices and how to use positive behavior interventions and supports, or PBIS. Toward that end, we identified a training called Safety First that focuses on the use of research-based strategies and interventions appropriate for the physical and developmental characteristics of very young children. The training emphasizes preventing the need for physical restraint with preschoolers who are, across the nation, restrained more often than children in K-12. The goals of Safety First training are to prevent injuries and to teach social skills, behavioral expectations, problem solving, and self-regulation, rather than punish young children for not yet having developed these skills. Safety First also provides staff, families, and children with common goals, language, and strategies to use when challenging behavior does occur. This training is aligned with our Kansas ESI regulations, and it's available at low or no cost to Kansas School District preschool programs. Last year, our master trainers provided Safety First training in 22 Kansas communities for nearly 600 participants in all regions of the state. This year, we've begun to schedule the training for districts and cooperatives we didn't get to last year. And we've added additional resources to the training, including information on PBIS for families of young children. I believe the positive evaluations of this training were shared with you previously, but what's probably even more important are the follow-up surveys that suggest 97 to 100% of respondents were either using or intend to use the strategies they learned in this training. And of those who have used the strategies, 89 to 98% say they've been effective. Also important for sustainability is that 91% of the administrators who participate in Safety First training indicate they'll make this training part of their district plan for meeting ESI regulations. Safety First strategies are likely to be most successful when implemented within a multi-tier system of supports. Administrators and early childhood practitioners are encouraged to seek additional training on how to implement a comprehensive system of social, behavior, and early academic supports for all of our youngest learners, which is, of course, we know the most effective prevention plan of all. So it's like the Ounce of Prevention campaign says, change the first 5 years and you change everything. Just Google that if you haven't seen it. And I just want to thank the board for your leadership. We can reduce the need for emergency safety interventions, especially with preschoolers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dr. John Morton, followed by Sarah Locust.
Good morning. I'm here wearing my Emporia State University hat this morning to invite you to our rescheduled conference entitled Common Sense About the Common Core. It will be held on Thursday, October 30th at Emporia State from 10 to 4. I think it has several unique features. We're looking for a vehicle to bring educators together to really dialogue and talk about what efforts have been made, what needs to be done, how do we approach this in a common sense fashion. To that end, each participant in the conference will receive an e-book, which has been written by several colleagues and I, to deal with the basic areas, I think, that we think to establish a framework around the Common Core. One of the things that I think will also be unique is that we're going to try to schedule job-alike sessions in the afternoon to break down our folks by, for example, primary teachers, intermediate teachers, middle school, high school, and administrators at those levels to really talk about what we're doing and use that as sort of a launching point to create focus groups that will continue to dialogue and meet throughout the year. The cost of the conference is $75 to state board members. We are underwriting the cost of your participation. If you choose to participate, we would encourage you to attend that day. Registration is available. It opened this week at the Jones Institute website, www.emporia.edu/Jones. We look forward to a meaningful day. I think there's been an awful lot of conversation about the Common Core. We're going to try to inject common sense into that conversation, and hopefully it'll be a good, productive day for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Sarah Locust, followed by Kelsey Schmitz.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Locust. I'm an attorney with the Kansas Association of School Boards, and I want to speak with you this morning regarding the complaint or proposed appeal process to the State Department of Education on the ESI regulations. We've talked to you previously about some specific recommendations we have to language regarding the proposals for the amendment to the ESI regulations. This morning I want to focus with you on 3 points that I would like for you to keep in mind this afternoon as you're hearing your report on the ESI regulations and at your next meeting when you are likely to receive a report from SEAC, either with a recommendation or saying no recommendation. First of all, the Kansas Constitution vests control of local school districts and local school boards. That's commonly referred to as local control. Likewise, the Constitution vests the state board with oversight authority over the school districts. So what that means is that you have the obligation to ensure compliance with the laws by the school districts. That does not mean that you have the ability to substitute your opinion for the opinion of the local school board. In my opinion, the appeal process requested by the Disability Rights Center or endorsed by the Disability Rights Center would have you substituting the judgment of State Department staff members for the judgment of local school boards, because essentially you would be overruling factual determinations made by those boards. Likewise, the second point is a jurisdictional issue. The regulations you have promulgated, you certainly have jurisdiction to enforce those regulations. The KSDE staff proposal regarding an appeal process for the ESI regulations has stated that the only reasons for an appeal process would be to ensure compliance with the regulations. For example, to ensure there's a policy and to ensure that they are following the policy. The regulations do not give any indication of how school boards are to comply with those policies in specifics, such as if there is a specific type of complaint, what must the school board do to resolve it? They don't address that issue. And so, in effect, again, you'd be substituting your judgment for the factual judgment of the board. And finally, we would submit to you, as Mr. Collins did, that this appeals process is simply not necessary at this time. There is no evidence that there is a widespread abuse of the process. We are aware of one appeal to a local board and only 2 other issues that were taken to the principal's office. No other issues have come to our attention. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Kelsey Schmitz, followed by Tom Krebs.
Good morning. I'm Kelsey Schmitz, and I am a behavior specialist with TASN. I'm also on the MTSS project. My work with children with challenging behavior began over 17 years ago. As you know, there has been a work group established to support the implementation of the emergency safety interventions. And this work group addresses the requirements for school personnel training, promotes parent awareness and understanding of the regulations, and undertakes data review and analysis to identify trends and build technical assistance to address the needs of the field. This group is committed to reframing ESI to put the focus on prevention and preventing the need for these dangerous procedures. This year we continue our training efforts. For example, we have a regional on-site training related to de-escalation that we're providing across the state. Your handout is the notes page that the participants receive. We partnered with national expert Dr. Jeff Colvin and the work of other national experts to develop this training. Our main message during this training is that we know far more about effective prevention strategies than we do about how to address challenging behaviors once they occur. We emphasize prevention. We spend time addressing beliefs of behavior management, because for many years the go-to strategy was to wait until behavior occurred and use coercive and punishing methods to stop. Educational researchers Brophy and Evertson state the key to successful classroom management is to prevent problem behaviors before they start, not knowing how to deal with problems after they have begun. Efforts to curtail seclusion and restraint begin the first day students walk into the building through positive school climate, good curriculum, and effective instructional strategies. These regulations have created an impetus for schools to facilitate a change in practices that have for many years relied on seclusion and restraint for disciplinary purposes as opposed to emergency situations. We want to thank you for all you have done to support this movement. It's having far-reaching impacts on children in Kansas educational settings by changing the conversation to emphasize prevention and teaching. I welcome you to visit our resource page at www.ksdetasn.org and attend any of our on-site presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tom Krebs, followed by Megan DeMoss.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Tom Krebs from the Kansas Association of School Boards. You have three publications I've shared with you, and I'll address each of them. But first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. KSB would like to share the preliminary work of the Legislative Committee. That's one of the handouts you have, especially regarding the issue of student assessments. Our committee met the day after the conference KSB convened on the Rose standards, or as we're now calling them, capacities. We look at that as clarification to not have people get the Rose capacities confused with any sort of standards, i.e. Kansas College and Career Standards. It was attended by 77 state leaders from educational organizations and political bodies, including 7 members of this board. We heard from Brad Neuenswander, Andy Tompkins, and Janice Smith from the Children's Cabinet during the morning and had some great insights offered for their work. And then in the afternoon, we had a discussion that many of you participated in, and you have a complete report on the results of that discussion. And we're doing this in a couple of places so you can get an idea of what people are saying about it. So that worked out quite well. But I think most clearly what I want to share with you today are the things that in our legislative committee that we think address some of your issues. First, specifically, we support the 7 Rose capacities as educational goals, and while continuing to support the state board's definition of college and career readiness. We think they weave together very well, and you can see the page in the section that we refer to. The second, we want to develop a new definition of student expectations for graduation based on demonstrating communications and other foundational skills, demonstrating political, economic, and government understanding, knowledge of physical and mental health, and grounding in the arts and culture awareness, as determined by local boards. This was one of the key parts of the discussion. There was no support for broadening state assessments in many of these new areas addressed by the Rose standards. And then also demonstrating preparation for post-secondary study and employment based on student individual plan to study. Now, we're going to recommend essentially that every board, every district have a policy on individual plans of study. We are certainly not asking for every district to be mandated to have an individual plan of study, but we want every district to have that conversation. We want to support moving the high school assessments to the early possible grade. I mentioned in my testimony 9th grade, but we know that's not possible. We've been in contact with the department. We're certainly supportive of the earliest possible, which would be 10th grade, but then any assessments after that would be determined by the local district and could fit the plan of study. And I just want to point out, as several of you know, as your former board members, this legislative committee is just a proposal at this point, and until our Delegate Assembly approves it in December, it is just that, a proposal, but we are starting to share it with our members. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Steve Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, Tom, what's the hang-up with teaching 9th grade? Why is it less feasible for 9th grade than 10th grade, please?
I think your commissioner can answer that one.
I can go into it, but that's part of the assessment update if you want to do that.
I wait with bated breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Next, we have Megan DeMoss, followed by Vicki Vosler.
Good morning. I am Megan Moss, and I am here representing the Kansas Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, other known as KFERD. I've taught elementary physical education for 33 years, my first 16 in Wichita, and now I'm currently in Rose Hill. I'm also the president of SHAPE Central District, which is our new Society for Health and Physical Educators. I am speaking to you today about our new national standards and grade level outcomes for physical education. With Common Core in mind, these physical education content standards and outcomes were written to reflect the knowledge and skills that we expect students to have learned in physical education. They have also been written in a manner that is measurable to facilitate assessment and student tracking of student progress. Grade level outcomes provide a progressive scope and sequence, which you have in your pamphlet, that leads to achieve the standards ultimately to become a physically literate individual who will be ready for college or career and a physically active life. The goal of physical education is to develop a physically literate individual who has the knowledge, skills, and confidence to enjoy a lifetime of healthful physical activity. The standards are in the pamphlet in front of you. Standard 1 focuses on physical skills. Standard 2 is about obtaining knowledge of those skills and the concepts relating to them. 3 is all about fitness and physical activity. 4, personal and social behavior. And 5 is about valuing physical activity in your life. The road to a lifetime of physical activity begins in elementary school with the foundational skills, related concepts, and just learning how to move and play with others. Fitness testing begins in 3rd grade, as well as learning about health-related components of fitness. In middle school, the students begin to apply the skills and knowledge that they have obtained. They should understand the value of working as a team and also how to challenge themselves as an individual. As fitness knowledge matures, choices on physical activity are applied. In high school, lifetime activity skills are the focus, finding out what physical activities they enjoy, understanding why they are important, and finding time in their schedules to do it. We are ready to take on the challenge of producing physically literate individuals. If you have further questions about physical activity or physical education, please don't hesitate to contact anyone related with KFERT or Shape America. We are the experts in physical education. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe we have a question from Kathy Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of, I think, the things that weren't so positive about No Child Left Behind was our increase in emphasis on standardized testing, our preparing for the test, and as a result, our decrease in physical activity time, whether it was physical education or getting out for recess. I think as you start looking at research, you understand that has been bad for our children. Kids need that physical activity so then they can sit still and listen in class. So I hope your organization, and I assume you guys will, are really going to get out and talk to your administrators also to continue to understand, so they understand the need for that. I think you called it a physically fit or physically literate. Yeah. So I hope that your organization's working on that also, because I think it goes hand in hand with the academics. We can't do one without the other.
I appreciate your support, and I think that we are doing a very nice job of getting the information out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Vicki Vossler, followed by Dr. Ann Matthews.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Vossler, and I am the Special Ed Director for the Holton Co-op in Northeast Kansas. I represent 5 districts, and I'm here to speak a little bit about ESI and to let you know that we are working well in our area. We have had no parental complaints. As a result of the regulations, we have been able to increase our discussions with the local districts, not only special ed, but general education in the area of positive behavior supports, which has been a plus. We have worked with groups, TASN, and we've had Phoebe Wrinkle out to work with our elementary and our preschool special education teachers. So we believe that the regulations that are in place are working well for us. And because we've not had any parental concerns and we've been able to work things out on the local level, at this time we don't feel there's a need for an appeal process. And so I'm here to support many of the things that Terry Collins said and the work that he has done within our KC organization. So thank you. If you don't have any questions, good day.
Thank you. Now Dr. Ann Matthews, followed by Katherine Johnson.
Good morning. It's nice to see you again. I'm Ann Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for the Auburn-Washburn School District here in Topeka, but I'm here to speak to you as a former chairperson of SEAC. In the year 2012-13, when the State Board asked SEAC to take time to research and make a recommendation around the situations with emergency safety interventions, I had the privilege of being the chairperson of SEAC at that time. And I'd like to take a moment to kind of revisit that recommendation with you. At that time, a tremendous amount of attention and airtime was committed on the part of the council to ensure that we heard from many sides of the issue, and we took special care to study the stories that were presented by parents. We held a series of meetings and discussions over the course of several months, actually. We collected testimony and opinions. And what we found is that context is important. It's very important. The details of each story dictate how a course of action should be put in place to resolve a problem. Each of these students has a unique set of circumstances that surround their story and with their family and with their school district. This discovery grounded our recommendation to you. SEAC believed that while one-size-fits-all definitions and mandates might provide protections in one situation, they might also stifle effective practice in another. The central tenet of our recommendation to the board was that the regulations should live and breathe at the local level. You heard us, and you accepted that recommendation, and your regulation gave districts the responsibility to craft our work within a set of expectations. Your decision provided for the thoughtful design of decision-making systems and procedures that make sense in each unique community. Today, your vision has made a difference in the day-to-day activities behind the classroom door. Because your regulations framed expectations and required us to flesh out the details in our hometowns, we have a much deeper understanding and ownership of this important issue. Your forward thinking has changed schools all over Kansas. We have moved from mere compliance to a reflective practice. Creative problem solving occurs at the local level by people who have a frame of reference. Seldom do compliance officers and outside authorities contribute collaborative solutions. And that's because they can't. Without the rich context that surrounds each unique family, mutually agreeable solutions are rarely put on the table. In special education, we're used to mediation and conflict resolution meetings, and those are critical steps when families and schools disagree, and these methods are very effective. As you consider new requests for complaint provisions, I urge you to stay true to the foundational provisions of SEAC's recommendation and your regulation. Please leave problem solving in the hands of the stakeholders. Students in Kansas deserve school environments in which adults work together to keep us all safe and learning. Thanks for your time this morning. Questions?
Thank you. And our last speaker will be Catherine Johnson.
Morning, everybody. I'm Catherine Johnson. I'm an attorney with the Disability Rights Center of Kansas, and I'm here this morning to address a few of the previous speakers regarding their thoughts and comments to you on the ESI regulations and the request to amend those regulations to include an appeal process. The board, over 18 months ago now, requested that KSDE staff bring back an appeal process for the board's consideration. The board at that time was not concerned with numbers of complaints or appeals that have been filed because no complaints or appeals have been filed. This was a founding issue of concern for the board. The board felt that parents needed to have another opportunity to resolve the complaint on ESI within the Department of Education. The board considered that the parents have rights to file complaints with other agencies and very clearly did not want parents turning to other agencies to resolve a complaint that the Department of Education, the State Board of Education, felt that they had jurisdiction and authority to decide. Since that time that the regulations have been put into place, we continue to hear complaints from parents. When parents call our office, the discussions we have with them are protected by attorney-client privilege. It would be malpractice and against ethical guidelines for me to call any school official and say, I have these complaints, I want you to deal with them. That is up to the parent to decide how they want to handle those issues and if they want to disclose those complaints to the school. I'd like to take a few minutes just to give you an idea of some of the flavor of complaints that we hear on a pretty regular basis. We hear complaints about how much time children are spending in seclusion, that children are frequently put in seclusion rooms for hours, sometimes days, that once a student is in that seclusion room, they have to earn points before they're able to leave. That some schools make a distinction between what's called a safe room and a seclusion room. When you look at a safe room, it clearly meets the definition of a seclusion room, but schools do not provide documentation to the parent on that room. Those are just some of the concerns we have regarding the need for why an appeal process should exist. I'd like to take my final minute to address Sarah Loquist's comment. Sarah's Loquist's opinion seems to be that the State Board of Education cannot overstep a local decision on an ESI complaint. I urge you to think about this and consider this very seriously. This would mean no parent could ever file a complaint challenging a local decision, which is against what the board had requested over a year and a half ago that a parent be able to do. This would mean that if a teacher put a student in a headlock and that local level decision was no violation of the ESI occurred, that parent would have no recourse, if Ms. Loquist's opinion is correct. I would urge you to look at that, and I would urge you to consider the DRC former general counsel version that was submitted to you. I believe it's the only draft that gives a parent the ability to file an individual complaint based on usage. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The State Board Citizen Open Forum is closed at 11 o'clock a.m. We would like to thank our speakers for sharing their views with the board. The State Board will determine if any of the issues should be addressed as an agenda item at a future meeting. Well, we come to a special time on our agenda today. We are so pleased to have representation from several school districts and from our state PTA organization. PTA has been a wonderful partner to us here at the Board of Education in promoting good relationships between parents and schools, all in the idea that students perform better when those bonds are formed. So I want to introduce Laura Kaiser. I've known Laura ever since I've been on the board. She's a wonderful spokesman for PTA and for education. She is currently the Family Engagement Chairperson for Kansas, and she is a past state president. She has 25 years of service with PTA. We want to thank you, Laura, and I'm assuming you're going to introduce Tammy because I do want to recognize her.
Exactly. She was just getting the certificates ready. This is Tammy Bartle. She is our current Kansas PTA president. And you need to come on up here, too. Okay, yeah, don't do that. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to recognize 6 outstanding Kansas PTA schools and their accomplishments. We want to thank the board for allowing us to celebrate the outstanding collaboration and work of these PTAs and their schools. I'm going to first give a brief overview of the National PTA School of Excellence program, and then we'll proceed into presenting each honoree with their framed certificate from Kansas PTA. I hope to end a little early, don't know about that, so that you can ask questions. We'll then take a short break for pictures. We've provided you with a final national report from National PTA on the program. The National PTA School of Excellence program's goal is for PTAs to partner with their schools to engage families in student success and continuous school improvement, and thus enrich the educational experience and overall well-being for all students. Through this free program, the PTA and the school work collaboratively to assess how families feel their school measures up to a number of research-based key indicators for effective family engagement. These indicators are framed around the National PTA Standards for Family-School Partnerships, which this board endorsed in 2008. These standards can be found on page 3 of the report we have given you. The principal and the PTA also surveyed using a similar assessment. They were surveyed using a similar assessment. The PTA and the school identified a shared school improvement goal and objective based on the national standards for family-school partnerships. The focus was to be on one of 3 areas: improving family engagement in education, ensuring students' health and safety, and number 3, supporting arts and education. They then submitted their goal and their initial assessment results to National PTA. National PTA sent them a customized roadmap that gave them specific suggestions and resources. They also received access to a dedicated area of the National PTA website, which was populated with a wealth of resources and tools. The PTA and the school worked on their shared school improvement goal and then reevaluated the families, the principal, and the PTA at the end of the school year. The pre- and post-assessments are called the Family School Partnership Scans. The final scan results with a narrative were submitted to National PTA by June 1st and evaluated during the summer. The evaluation was based on their own progress given their beginning resources. Each PTA and school was evaluated on its own merits. The first week in August, our 6 outstanding PTAs and schools were notified that they were a National PTA School of Excellence Award recipient. The designation is for 2 years, 2014 to 2016. Our hope is that all PTAs and PTA schools in Kansas will participate in this free, outstanding program to make sure their families feel welcomed and empowered to support student success, and that PTA is a key partner for continuous school improvement. And now, to honor our 6 outstanding PTAs and schools, our 2014-2016 School of Excellence Award recipients. They worked extremely hard last year, breaking down barriers to engage families in ways that made a substantial and positive impact on their school and on student success. When I call your PTA and school name, will you please come forward to the podium so I can introduce you? Tammy and I will then present you with your certificate. I would ask that the next group be prepared to come forward immediately when called. Then when we're done, we'll break for a group picture and for 3 district pictures. So the first recipient is Comanche Elementary PTA and Comanche Elementary School. I'd like to introduce from Comanche PTA President Amanda Reese and School of Excellence Co-Chair Adrian Bettendorf, and the 2013-2014 Co-President Kim Meyer-Young, and Comanche Elementary School Principal Jennifer Tilley, and I believe Dr. Henson, do you want to come up too? The China Mission School District Superintendent and Board President Deb Zila, and I think I saw Donna Bisfield come in too. She's also a board member. So to let you know a little bit about Comanche PTA and what they did in their school, they worked hard last year to build a lasting family-school partnership. The school and the PTA co-hosted several family engagement events throughout the year, and they will continue with this in the years to come. A surprise that came from their surveys was that their families did not feel that they were being asked to volunteer. This led Comanche to come up with a variety of ways to ask their families for help. Amanda wanted me to convey that they are honored to have been chosen as a National PTA School of Excellence recipient, and they are thrilled to be here today. Congratulations to Comanche Elementary PTA and Comanche Elementary School. Okay. Well, for the next one, you've got
Thank you.
Have a seat. The next PTSA and school is FWE PTSA and Francis Willard Elementary School. Would you please come forward? It's an honor to introduce FWE PTSA President Rachel Henderson and Francis Willard Elementary Principal Ms. Sarah Pike, and Kansas City, Kansas Superintendent Dr. Cynthia Lane. And I want to tell you a little bit about their program. According to Rachel, Francis Willard in their pre and post surveys show that their parents, students, and community felt that it was important to let parents know what was going on in the district, both current and future plans. So collaboratively, they informed their families through newsletters, informational meetings, and phone messages. They also learned that their families have a common thread, such as a love for reading. So the PTSA launched a Kindle initiative. PTSA bought a class set for the library, developed a 5-year plan so that each grade would have a set in the next 5 years, and the PTSA gave away Kindles to families all year long at numerous events. But the most important thing that they learned was the importance of male role models. They had a tremendous turnout for their first annual Donuts with Dads. There were lots of dads who wanted to get involved. Their PTSA researched ways to help dads get involved in their child's education in school. On September 5th, 2014, they launched their school's first ever Watchdog program and signed up 13 dads that day. Rachel said, "Great things are to come with this wonderful program." Every event, idea, or activity was centered on the goal of getting families involved and including every member of the family. Throughout the next years, the PTSA and the school plan to continue to strengthen the program set in place. They would like to continue to find leaders in their school to encourage new ideas and help their community PTSA grow for the good of their children. Congratulations to FWE PTSA and Francis Willard Elementary School. Our next school in PTSA or PTA is Oak Grove Elementary PTA and Oak Grove Elementary School. And this is so much fun because I've worked with all these people, but I haven't put a face with a name yet. So as I'm introducing them, I'm trying to find who it is. So I want to introduce Oak Grove Elementary PTA President Tiffany Haynes. And Oak Grove Elementary School Principal Jay Douglas, and Turner School District Superintendent Dr. Michelle Hubbard. And then did you also have your, did Joy Engel come? PR girl. Oh, okay. Well, behind us is Turner School District Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Joy Engel. According to Tiffany, when they sent out the first survey last year and also had their first school events, they noticed a huge lack of family participation. They also noticed that they were lacking in providing events and information that engaged their parents. They began ensuring that every document they sent home was also translated into Spanish. They also started removing the title of mom and dad from their events and making them more open events so that students who lived with relatives felt involved and welcomed. They got teachers to volunteer at several events, which of course the students love. Tiffany said that anytime you can unite the family and the school in a fun environment, it really builds that bond. This year, with their membership cards, parents are being provided a calendar of events for the entire quarter, as well as a contact list for the school and the PTA. They want their families to feel completely connected with their teachers and the school. Congratulations to Oak Grove Elementary PTA and Oak Grove Elementary School. Our next recipient is Shawnee Mission East High School PTA and Shawnee Mission East High School. Would you please come forward? You all. From Shawnee Mission East High School PTA, we have board member Lori Bledsoe. Hi. And board member Mary Sinclair. And then we have the Shawnee Mission East High School principal, John McKinney. And we also have Superintendent Dr. Jim Henson, Board President Deb Zila, and Board Member Donna Bisfield. At Shawnee Mission East High School, the parent survey results from the fall and spring actually became a meaningful tool to make data-based improvements and adjust priorities within existing means of homeschool communication. The survey results reflected a priority that is noted commonly in family engagement research. Parents want to be informed about how their children are progressing academically. The PTA added back in an evening meeting option to be more inclusive of working parents. The principal was able to make a strong case to teachers about the prevalent desire among parents for timely school progress reporting across all courses. Teachers could be confident that the time spent making the progress information consistently available was truly valued by parents. The PTA and the Shawnee Mission East school leadership partnered throughout the process and continue to do so. Congratulations to Shawnee Mission East High School PTA and Shawnee Mission East High School. Okay, the next recipient is Shawnee Mission South High School PTSA and Shawnee Mission South High School. It's an honor to introduce Shawnee Mission South High School PTSA immediate past president Diane Johnson and Shawnee Mission South High School associate principal Ryan Fleury. And then we have Dr. Jim Henson, superintendent, Dr. Fitzgerald. Okay. Shawnee Mission South High School PTSA and the school started the School of Excellence program in the wake of the press covering recent school shootings. After taking some initial steps, they found that many of the objectives required capital outlay. They changed their focus to their newly established diversity committee and making their school more inviting for all families, not just the ones that already felt comfortable in the school. They were surprised at how positive their first survey results were, but they found some great areas to work on. They found that communicating with their Spanish-speaking families was an area that needed attention. Their second survey was sent out by mail in Spanish to try to connect with more families. One of their aha moments was realizing that some of their non-English speaking parents couldn't find basic rooms in the school, such as the office and attendance. They amended their PTSA budget to allow for signs to be made in at least one other language this year. They are continuing their diversity committee this year and will partner with and have presentations from various student groups throughout the year. Congratulations to Shawnee Mission South PTSA. Okay, so please join me in congratulating these outstanding PTAs and schools one more time. I did what? Oh no, North. So sorry. Okay. We also have Shawnee Mission North High School PTSA and Shawnee Mission North High School. Please come forward. And this is a large group. So. My page is stuck. I am so sorry. Okay, yeah, it is. It's hard to contact. So from Shawnee Mission North High School PTSA, we have the president, Corey Hastings. It's nice to meet you. Their vice president of membership, Pam Watson. And their treasurer, Erin Kempfer. Recording secretary, Karen Frisbee. And corresponding secretary, Mary Lou Patterson. And then also their school principal, Richard Kramer. And then we have wonderful board. Their main goal was to improve family engagement and education. The PTSA supported student success by sending out newsletters to parents, volunteering for laptop deployment, and the charity picnic, and raising money for their Student Assist Fund. The PTSA worked with the school to welcome families and to introduce themselves to local business owners, all with the goal to improve family engagement and increase student success. Congratulations to Shawnee Mission North PTSA and Shawnee Mission North High School. When we do, we're going to, I understand, break then for pictures. But I'd ask that just one PTA representative participate in the large state group picture, and then we have 3 different district pictures as well. I want to thank all the PTAs, the schools, the superintendents, and the boards who have all supported this program, and thank you to this board for allowing us to honor these outstanding 2014-2016 PTA School of Excellence recipients. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations to all of those who were recognized today. We will take a break until 11:30 for a photo op, so that'll give others a chance to move around and talk to each other. Oh, what? Oh, sorry. Janet Waugh, I'm sorry. I didn't see this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take an opportunity to offer my personal congratulations to all these PTAs and districts. I'm extremely proud. As many of you know, my background is PTA. That's where my first introduction to schools was through my volunteer work in PTA. I served on not only the local but the state level. I recognize the challenge of receiving these awards. I am so proud. Several of my schools were recognized from my district, and I feel the Shawnee Mission schools are my schools too because I represent a part of Johnson County. And from my data that I recall from my PTA days, and I'm assuming it's still true, schools that have active PTAs it's reflected in the achievement of their students. Their students do much better on testing and in every other area. So I thank you for your efforts. I congratulate you, and I'm extremely proud of you.
Thank you, Janet, and I apologize. My computer screen had blacked out and I didn't see your name. Now we will take that break, so be back at 11:30. I hate to interrupt these great conversations, but I would ask our board members to return to the table so we can move forward with our next report. Thank you. Next on our agenda is an assessment report. I believe Scott Smith he was here a minute ago. And there he is. And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for, it's kind of crazy out in the hallway there for a second. We have, as you can see here, an assessment and accountability update. I'll cover the accountability portion and a little bit of the policy stuff with the first few slides, and then I'll turn it over to Beth, who can talk about more of the matter-of-fact things with regard to this year's testing schedule. Waiver activities and status for the months primarily of August and September. So this is basically just a review of where we were. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. This is just a review of where we were initially with our waiver way back in December of 2013, and I know Brad has talked about this. We had a few people even mention it in the open forum I heard. So this is just to clarify where we were initially with our plan. All students would be taking, in grades 3 through 8, would take the same state assessment. All students in high school would take the state assessment unless they had already demonstrated college career readiness on another assessment, ACT, the SAT, the CPAS. The state assessments would be SBAC assessment, way back when. And then the state approved the bouquet model, which we'll be talking about more later, but chose to have CETE develop the state assessment. So then, just to sort of clarify where we were, as you probably know, our waiver was approved. So just to clarify again, what was approved and what was not. the U.S. Department of Education approved the Kansas ESEA Flex waiver for one more year, so that takes us through 14 and 15. They removed our high-risk status, which means that we can move forward with our teacher leader evaluation model using growth. They allowed Kansas to use student growth as a significant factor in the 17-18 school year. And this one we'll be talking about later as well. It allowed Kansas to use exempted Kansas from reporting 2014 assessment results because of the DDoS attack, which we all know about. And then in red there at the bottom, they did not approve the Kansas assessment bouquet model. Performance on ACT, SAT, state assessments is not comparable, they said. And then that last bullet there, this was really the clincher. Each child has to take the same test in grades 3 through 8 in high school. So there was a silver lining to this, at least in my opinion. Having that bouquet model rejected or turned down forced a number of agency stakeholders, in fact, the Kansas College Career Ready Assessment Advisory Committee, the Kansas Assessment Advisory Committee, I think even the KSDE, it forced a number of us to think about why it was we weren't able to do what we wanted to do. And then here you have this is just as a courtesy, the language in the box there is the language excerpted from the actual letter from the U.S. Department of Education saying no. So this takes us to the original bouquet model. So as I said, it forced us to think about why we weren't able to do what we wanted to do. In reality, what we realized was we were dragging forward from the old AYP era, I will call it, or the old AYP regime, perhaps, a footprint, we're calling it, with regard to the state assessments. What we realized was that at the high school, in grades 3 through 11, we had a footprint of 9 tested grades. And we're really just talking about high school here. So for all intents and purposes, the state assessment footprint was a 3-year footprint. I'll explain what I mean by that. And you can see that grades 9, 10, and 11 are covered there. And as I said, this took quite a bit of reflection on our part to sort of think about what we were doing. So the assessment footprint with AYP and OTL, what were we actually doing in the past that was frustrating our efforts to move forward? Well, an 11th grade cohort was chosen under AYP back in 2006 to maximize instructional time in high school in response to AYP targets. Originally, and when I say originally, by that I mean the old state assessments back in 2005 and 2006, they actually had they were written to be a 10th grade cohort. I mean, that was the grade level that was targeted. And OTL, Opportunity to Learn, began as a policy to align test administration with instruction during grades 9, 10, and 11. In other words, because we knew we just had to test once in high school, we thought, wouldn't it be nice to align the test when that student was ready, provide schools some flexibility. But later on, a double testing option was added in response to the AYP mandate to make all students proficient by 2014. So in short, and I guess maybe I should first move through these bullets. Well, wait just a second here, actually. Even though the tests were written at the 10th grade level, we knew that, or schools knew, that the pressure for AYP was to make 100% of the students proficient by 2014. So if we could maximize the instructional time and set forward an 11th grade cohort, that would give us as much time as possible. And that's what I meant by now we've really inserted the state assessment in the lives of students in high schools for a 3-year period, 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade. Schools' emphasis was placed on monitoring optional priority and complete students. We had to create a system whereby we looked at every single student in the state, and we had to determine, has this student taken the test one time? Have they taken it twice in the same building? Have they not taken it at all? because the OTL rule stipulated that you could only take the test, if you took the test twice in the same building, you were done. But you had to have a state assessment by the time you were a junior. So my point here in addressing this or mentioning this is it created a lot of psychic work for district people to monitor these students. Some schools tested ninth graders to determine or diagnose those who were proficient and whose scores could be banked toward making AYP. So to try to summarize this last little, and I apologize, I know this can be really confusing. The Opportunity to Learn policy created a 3-year footprint comprised of formative assessments, interim assessments, double testing, banking scores, and monitoring individual student assessment histories, while at the same time rewarding only proficient scores for AYP, nothing higher. So in an attempt to maximize instructional time, what we also did was really increase the role of the state assessment in the lives of students and in the lives of administrators in terms of what they had to monitor and manage and deal with. But the other trick or the other thing I think to remember in the old AYP system is that we did not give credit for anything higher than proficient. It was what we called a net proficiency model. It would be as if I walked into a classroom and said, it's great that I've got a certain number of students earning C's, a certain number of students earning B's, and a smaller number of students perhaps making A's. Everyone gets a C because that's what we're rewarding. That was the old AYP model that we're leaving behind. And it was because of that we had the opportunity to learn policy that grew up the way it grew. Another way of thinking about this, our reading performance levels in Kansas, if you look at 2012 and 13, actually if you look at 13, the category that houses the largest number of students, 29.9, is exemplary. And you've got 29.5, for goodness sake, and exceeds. But neither of those categories was rewarded or recognized in the old AYP system. Again, it was a net proficiency model that just looked at proficient and above. They're all collapsed into that same category. So this was kind of, as I said, the catalyst or the impetus for helping us move forward with this. So, knowing that we no longer have that model, that we no longer have a net proficiency model, that we no longer have AYP at the building level, what makes sense with regard to how we handle our tests and how we schedule them? This is what we've come up with. Again, conversations with, I know Kansas Association of School Boards, USA, the CAC, the CRAC, I don't know, probably 75 districts involved here, maybe more than that. Moving the state assessment back to the 10th grade. So what we have now is the state assessment 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, nothing at the 9th grade level. And then at the 10th grade level, after students have adjusted, we go back to really what we had before, earlier on, with the idea of a 10th grade cohort. What this does is basically move, in the state, we move from 9 tested grades down to 7. So I'm going to stop to catch my breath here.
Do you have a question, Sally?
Sally Cobble.
While you're catching your breath, the concept of doing it in 10th grade instead of 9th grade is you felt like there was too many adjustments of moving into a new building? Is that why you didn't?
We talked about both, and they were, as one person said, they both were cussed and discussed. The 9th grade obviously really constrains the amount of the college or the Kansas College Career Ready standards that we could put on an assessment. Students would only be in the school for 5 months or so before they took that assessment. All of those adjustments that freshmen make, new to high school, those were a factor. We also discussed if we would have gone with the 9th grade. A lot of folks proposed, well, if we were to do that, maybe then we would actually want to move the test to the fall of their sophomore year, which would have been so that we could actually have a complete freshman test. And then the response there was, well, then isn't it a sophomore test, and do we really want to give a freshman test to sophomores in the fall? And the other problem with that was we know research is very, very clear that low SES students suffer a great deal from the summer learning loss because they don't have the same opportunities that other students do. So both the 9th grade model and the 10th grade model, I'll say, manage the same thing in terms of shrinking from 9 assessed grades down to 7. The 10th grade model allows us to measure growth at the high school. And so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, Sally.
Scott, I don't understand your saying that there were 9 tested grades when the test was, well, I guess my question is, then are you doing away with the opportunity to learn option? And many districts I've talked to felt like that was one of the primary advantages, because we've all said that our state assessment ought to help guide instruction. And if there is not an opportunity to use it in that way and give students another opportunity after they have learned whatever they were lacking in, it appears to me to be a disadvantage. So tell me your thinking about doing away with that option of giving kids another chance to.
It's a very good question. I'll back up to the first part. What I mean by 3 years of a footprint, 9 tested grades, what I'm really getting at are those state assessment-oriented activities that took up a great deal of time in the schools because of our 11th grade cohort. So if you were to have walked, say, 2011, 2010, if you were to have walked into a high school and visited with the principal, superintendent, even the IT people, what they would have been thinking about is preparing an 11th grade cohort. In other words, we have to make certain that every single student eventually, we have to make an AYP target. So every single student in this district has to be proficient. And the state, in order to accomplish that, has given us a lot of tools. We had formative assessments, we had interim assessments that were all geared toward getting everybody over that minimum proficiency hump. So all I really meant by that 3-year footprint, as I said, it's a very good question. It wasn't that the state assessment was, well, actually it was. We had students taking it their freshman year. If they didn't pass, they could take it their sophomore year or junior year. If they passed as a freshman, suppose Johnny comes in and I say, well, we're going to give Johnny this test. I know that the only thing the state rewards is proficiency. So it might be the case that he would score higher if I were to allow him to take more math, test him as a junior. But because they only reward proficiency, and I really have to concern myself with every student, I'm going to sort of blanket test all students. And as soon as he's proficient, he's done. He's locked. There's no opportunity to test again. And that's what I meant by diagnosis.
Well, I still think we need to consider what the purpose of that assessment is, and if it is going to be something that we actually look at and value as a means of planning instruction, then I think we need to consider that.
I would agree.
How that fits into the whole picture.
I would agree. My response would be to that with the performance index here on the right in the blue. That's exactly what we're doing. In our new system, points are awarded, for lack of a better phrase, for where you are, what performance category you're on. So we're not simply looking at proficient. So what we're basically saying to schools is, it's a sophomore cohort. It's designed with the expectation that after 2 years of exposure to Kansas College Career Ready Mathematics or Kansas College Career Ready Language Arts, that you would be ready to take this test. And oh, by the way, we're going to reward you for every single point on that scale. That's, in other words, and that would be my only response to your question about where kids should be after 2 years. And banking them, the downside of that is if we were to open it to freshmen, the same thing I think would occur. We would be basically saying, Johnny took it as a freshman. He's kind of locked in at that point as proficient. We don't really know how he would have scored after having another year's worth of math. But again, that's the old world. In this new world, because we're rewarding them for every step along the way, so that would be my best answer to your question.
Well, I can't say that we did not reward students who were excelling because we recognized them with certificates and other kinds of, so I think that argument that the only thing we recognized was proficient is not thought through very well.
And I perhaps misspoke. I was just referring to the accountability model, not what schools were doing, just the state accountability model. Brad.
I think the other key thing that the committees and the input we received is if you test at the sophomore level and all sophomores take it, you can now calculate at the student level growth from the 8th grade year to the sophomore year. You can also calculate a building level growth. But if kids are taking the assessment throughout different grades at the high school level,
that frustrated all efforts.
You'll lose the opportunity to be able to calculate growth at a student level and a building level because you have kids scattered all over. And part of the thing that we like now that AYP never had was growth of an individual student. And that is of big value to not only the individual student, but instructionally for those teachers to know how their students are growing in performance. And with AYP, high schools could never have a growth calculation because kids are taking it all at different years, so they were held to just one API score. And again, I think the biggest thing was in the old AYP world, if a kid scored meet standards, accountability-wise, we banked it, locked it in, banked it. It was never about the kid. It was about an AYP score at a building accountability level. This model really puts it back about where is the kid at the sophomore level based on the standards that have been taught. And so
I didn't bring it down because they were just run this morning, but it's absolutely something I could give to the board if you wanted. In 2012 and in 2013, there are anywhere from 30,000 to 35,000 students per grade in Kansas. So take a typical, actually, in 2013, the 11th grade cohort, if we looked at where did those kids actually take the state assessment, we use them for accountability purposes at the 11th grade. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm quite certain that it was something on the order of those 31,000, I think 8,000 or so took it as a freshman. The overwhelming number, 25,000 of that 31 took it as a sophomore. And then it was, some 7,000 or so took it as a junior. Now, we don't know whether that was their first time or their second time as a junior, but that was just to demonstrate, what has actually been taking place in the past, even though we had an 11th grade cohort. What has been taking place is the overwhelming majority of every single cohort was taking it at the sophomore year.
Kathy Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Particularly looking at the high school piece and whether it's 9th grade or 10th grade, because the assessment obviously in math, both areas, but will be based on the college career ready standards. But some school districts in math may be historically doing Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. Some may move to a blended model of mathematics instruction. So how's that going to impact on the math side of the state assessment?
The best thing, it's a very good question. We had conversations of late, and indeed it's the case that some schools are going algebra, algebra 2, geometry. They're delaying geometry. Some schools are saying that it's more of an integrated. We're talking about geometric concepts as early as 8th grade, so it's very messy. The other thing that I would add to that is the college career standards aren't grade banded. So it's not the case that we look at them and we see any mention at all to 9th or 10th grade. What we have instead are the targets that CETE will be writing to. So when they build a blueprint, and that's exactly what they're doing to support this test, what they're really thinking about is the amount of math that a freshman or sophomore should have. Now, I think in fairness to your question, it's possible that, very possible, that a district have a unique approach to teaching math that would not mirror the blueprint that they're putting together. They may do something like, well, we've decided that, and they're going to incorporate, I just talked to you the other day, aspects of astronomy, which I think is really neat, but that's what they're doing, not at all in the state standards, where they're delaying, as I said, geometry to the junior year in a very categorical way. So freshmen and sophomore, we're just talking about algebra and algebra 2. But again, and this would be so also with Smarter Balanced. I mean, it's not the case that KU is unique in this endeavor in terms of really trying to create a blueprint that gets down the road, and it will cover geometry. What they try to avoid is higher level geometric, and what they can control for that, I guess, is the cognitive load. What kind of algebra 2 are we talking about? What kind of algebra? So I don't know if that helps or not.
So how do we avoid, and I go back to NCLB where we had the delta indicators, and that really drove teaching to the test.
It really did.
With this blueprint, how do we avoid going back again, because we're not that far out of teaching to the test mentality. How do we avoid slipping right back into that?
I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, and I think my opinion would be that it's done with the accountability model. If we were to take a test, say a reading diagnostic like Dibbles, a fairly innocuous test that no one's talking about right now, if we insert that into an accountability model that is hard-boiled and oppressive, that's my word, I guess, all of a sudden people are really, Dibbles is going to take on an entirely new character. So I think what we're trying to do, and I'm going to skip ahead and answer your question to a couple of slides here. What we're trying to do, this, by the way, is the new footprint. So in other words, how do we avoid teaching to the test? Well, we create an accountability system that doesn't overwhelm districts with just the state assessment. So what we have represented here in the yellow is a brand new footprint, one that prior to this time we really weren't talking about. And it's those kinds of things that schools are doing. What we wanted to do is provide them the freedom to do that and the time to do that. By minimizing the footprint of the state assessment, we can introduce a new footprint and talk about college and career readiness. So back to not teaching the status to the state assessment. If this is what we were under NCLB, what we would want to move to is something like this, whereby when you are in high school, schools can think more clearly about a number of other things, and the state assessment is just a small piece of the puzzle. It's very, very different from the NCLB era in which we were saying, if you have 100 kids in your school, every single one of those kids will be proficient or more by 2014. And every year, the AYP targets ramp up. And you need to do whatever it has to be done to make certain that that happens. And lots of unintended consequences. And that's really what I meant to the earlier question about that 3-year footprint. It was all of those other things that we were providing them, intended as helps. But that really created that 3-year footprint. So we can now talk about, at the high school level, dual enrollment and individual. I heard mentioned earlier about individual plans of study, workforce skills, a number of other things.
Thank you.
Sally Cobble has a question before we move on.
Okay, thank you, Scott. As I try to move out of No Child Left Behind and into our new model, and as I visit with people on AYP, and then what we get hung up on, and I think what the public gets hung up on, is it is so tied so closely to the accountability part, and people don't understand the accountability part. And I like it. I like what you're trying to do. Brad, in one of his presentations, said that really grades, our philosophy is changing, because from grades 3 through 9 or 10, we're giving a state assessment to see where the children are, where they need to be and their gaps.
Yes.
Then we go on into the individual's plan. And so that in high school, they actually have a chance to follow their plan using the knowledge as a base of what they've gotten from our state assessments. And because we are no longer using AYP as an accountability approach, we can move to this and let our kids become who they need to become. But I think as we go out and we talk to schools and we talk to the public, we have got to talk about that accountability piece along with this. And I think that's where we're getting miscommunication and where we're going to get the pushback. And it's where I'm getting pushback from the teachers, is they don't understand the accountability plan has changed. And so as we do this, I think we're going to have to start talking about that accountability piece for all of this to make sense and for us to move on. And I know you're just doing the assessment part, but I don't think as a board maybe we've talked enough about our accountability for us to all get the flow of where we're going and what we're doing, because we slip back into that AYP. It's really giving high schools a lot of freedom to allow a lot more subjects and become a lot more of a liberal arts approach than math and science. Because if you have a child now that is not in math and science and then going into other fields, they don't know much, and they're spending a lot of time in higher ed trying to find themselves. And that kind of pushes it back down to where we want it in high school. I just really like this. And I think the people that were at the KSDE thing really got it and really understood what we were trying to do. I'm excited, but this is a new direction. I'm very fearful that we're not getting out ahead of the teetering about the talk about it, and we're going to have all this negative before we get the positive out. So I know you're talking about assessments. I really am. But I think as board members, we're going to have to think about how this all goes together to get to the board. And we're compartmentalizing everything when it really can't be. So I'm sorry. I like what you're doing. I see where we're going. But, you know, we as board members have got to get out of the AYP thing too. And it's hard. I mean, very hard. We've been doing it for so many years, and we've given the opportunity, and so I like it. Thank you very much. I like what you guys have been doing.
I think Brad had a comment.
Well, I know you have a couple other boards want to make comment, but you're right. The biggest shift is there's no less accountability. It's just AYP said every year, every building and every kid had to be at the same spot. The Assessment Performance Index really looks at where the kid is this year, but more importantly, the accountability at the building level is how is that building improving year to year? And every building has a different AMO or target based on where they're at, so the accountability is there, but it no longer says everybody has to be at the same spot every year. It is now, are your students growing in performance year to year? And that's what we really want, is improved. And you're right, and that's totally different than AYP.
But you can't almost talk about one without the other right now.
Ken Wellard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, just a comment to Sally's point and Brad's point. I think it's unclear to most people what accountability means and to whom it goes. Can you talk about that? Because, I mean, we're talking about approval from the U.S. Department of Education for our program, so we're trying to prove accountability to them. Am I correct in that? Or accountability for accreditation? It's all part of the same thing, I think. And I think that's where it's so easy to get lost in this.
I guess I'll try to. My message to the schools would be, I agree that accountability can be a very, very messy thing. And what we are trying to do is recognize that there are lots of things going on in schools other than simply the state assessment. Now, from an assessment point of view, if you sort of parse things back, what we're really doing is measuring standards. Sort of like, if you want to measure air pressure, then once you identify the construct to be measured, then we'll build the instrument. And we've called it the Kansas College Career Ready Standards. So, but there's a difference between saying, I am going to make a judgment about a human being and say whether or not they're Kansas College Career Ready simply because we happen to call these assessments the Kansas College Career Ready Standards. In other words, this is one piece of the puzzle. We do have to submit this assessment to the feds, and they will decide in a peer review whether or not it measures what it's supposed to measure. So, I mean, I'm just sort of speaking for myself in answer to what does accountability mean. We will use the state assessments as a part of our accountability system. And we can't just use any assessment. We have to submit that to the U.S. Department of Education and to say, we've decided to use air pressure as a part of our college career, as our accountability system. We've designed an instrument that we think measures air pressure. You tell us whether or not we've done that sufficiently. And they will pronounce upon our assessment. They'll say, yes, you have, or no, you haven't. This does measure, it does have constructibility, validity, content validity, or it doesn't. So also with English language arts. But I agree also with Sally, the numbers of things that we are introducing into this accountability model. In other words, all of these things in this pie are all brand new. Because in the past, I mean, maybe one of the good things about the old world was it was just bloody simple. I mean, you've got an AYP, or you've got obviously participation rates and attendance rates that we also looked at when we put them on the building report card. But it was, did you meet your AYP target? And overwhelmed districts with that one thing. So I think it's not a good answer to your question for me to say, it's a logical question for teachers to say now. Holy smokes, you're introducing all of these new things. In the AYP world, we didn't necessarily care for it, but it was easy to understand. And I think, again, Sally's absolutely right. That's what we're trying to do, is to talk about the assessments as they apply to the accountability model, just one small piece.
So for our purposes of the waiver, and for federal accountability, the only piece of that applies is the state assessment.
Yes. In fact, if you go back to this model, the new bouquet, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 are sort of, to use that language, are federal responsibility.
Assessment-based.
Yes. What schools do in grades 9, 11, and 12 is totally a local issue. I mean, that's pretty categorical, but I think I'm right on that. And it's brand new for schools. So for us, for the state to say, you've sort of done your duty, so to speak, at 10th grade, everything else that you do in the name and all of these other things are not part of the federal view. So ACT, that's a local option that we're not using for federal accountability. The ACT work keys or the SAT, the CPAS, local assessments, all those kinds of things, all at the local choosing.
So we will still use all of those other things,
yes,
as accountability measures for our benefit and for the benefit of the kids in this our schools. Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize for jumping in, but I have two job titles. So one of them, I would be standing there next to him also. But the value to Kansas was that everything, that bouquet at the top. And we wanted to have as many ways possible based on where that child wanted to go, to use multiple ways of measuring the board's definition. Are they academically ready? Do they have the cognitive skills, the technical skills, those employability skills? And we want to use all of those, and we have to have no one else's permission to use of this model past the 10th grade. It's whatever we want to do in Kansas. I think the other important thing is, and you know, yeah, there's times I get frustrated because someone in outside of Kansas says no, but the state statute even says this board will set the standards and assess those standards. We want to make that state assessment the footprint that's most meaningful to us in Kansas, meaningful to the kid. And this model gives us now an additional year to make decisions on where that kid needs to go, what weaknesses they have, what strengths they have. Instead of banking it to the junior year, that left us 1 year. And we can add additional measures. We're not saying up in that bouquet all those are equal. What we're saying is they're all meaningful to kids, and kids might take different ones, multiple ones based on where they want to go. And that's the purpose of, for the first time, being able to introduce that college and career ready footprint. Let's focus as a state on the kid and where they want to go, and what measures might be able to tell that kid, is he on track to be successful? We also, the one thing that we can do with the 3 through 8 and 10th is when kids take the ACT and maybe get a 22 in math, we can look at, well, how did they perform on the 10th grade assessment, the 9th grade, the 8th grade? And we can start telling kids early on that, hey, you don't think you're college material, but based on how you're performing on this, you're on track. So go give that a shot. Or the kid that wants to go to engineering or something, and we say, but you know, early on we're telling you, you have some areas you need some strengths, so we can make it more meaningful to the kid. So again, I apologize for jumping in, but I would normally be standing there with Scott too. But
if there's, and we don't have this visual, but if there's the most, I hate the word radical change, but it probably is a radical change would be for a lot of districts, is that we're back to, if we think of high school as a 4-year experience, educators were busy with the state assessments in some cases for 3 of those 4 years in the old world. With this model, it's 1. And those other 3 years, they're doing all of those other things that we value in Kansas that wouldn't be part of the federal, again, that was part of your question, it's not anything that we have to submit to the feds to have blessed or okayed.
Yeah. Well, one of my thoughts and concerns regarding this is that under the old AYP model, there was inordinate pressure, even down to grade 3, on kids for this assessment. How do we ensure that doesn't no longer exists, but at the same time that kids are getting what they need. But, I mean, I've told the story here that some of them have heard about my grandson who threw up the day before the test because he was concerned about this state assessment that's going to make his school look bad if he didn't do well. We had somehow, in our whole group think, we have to change that model, and that's...
I would agree, and I would agree also with Sally, your point earlier, that I think it goes back to it's the assessment in combination with the accountability model that it's inserted into. And if we do something really, really silly with the accountability model in terms of inflating the value of the assessment, then all of those kinds of things happen. Teaching to the tests, kids internalize this, and so it's something that we have to message, and it's just very, very new for teachers. This is very, very different from what we were looking at. So this visual, maybe we'll come up with a better visual, but this is the best one we have to sort of express what we're trying to do at this point.
Well, just one short comment. The visual would help me if it showed this as a part of the 3 through 8 experience, rather than just the visual would lead me to believe that the only thing that they're going to be measured on is the assessment.
Oh, absolutely, and maybe from your earlier question, I mean, I don't know, we could even identify that the state assessment is the only federal requirement that's of
helpful.
all of those other things are just totally optional state.
I think that's helpful, and that's part of the message we need to get out.
Okay.
Dina Horst has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There have been many, many comments, and I can't disagree with most of them anyway. But one of the comments that was made earlier was a concern about no longer being able to use the test to kind of guide instruction. And it seems to me, because you have an individual plan of instruction, you can use the scores to determine if there are weaknesses and strengths and help guide that student. Am I off track in believing that that's really what the purpose of that test can be for the use by the individual student? And then as we get into the bouquet, that's more of an accountability to students in a sense. It's their accountability.
I would agree completely. In fact, to the point about guiding instruction back to the 9th, 10th grade, what we want to be able to do is provide teachers and local folks with the means to sort of help the student decide with that individual plan of study. And yes, a state assessment, math assessment, so early as 9th grade, it may not measure enough math to really help the student out. But at the 10th grade level, absolutely. If they say, I want to be a chemical engineer, and so far, you have this particular math score, things are looking good, or we need to get busy in these remaining 2 years to help you succeed. So another benefit of moving it earlier, but absolutely, that would be part of the individual plan of study.
Okay, thank you. Well, Scott, we've jumped in with a lot of questions. I know this was a 2-part presentation. So to conclude your part of it, we discussed letting you conclude your part and then plugging, if it's okay with Beth, the second part of it in after our public hearings this afternoon. That would be at 2 o'clock. Would that be convenient for you? Okay, so we'll let you conclude your section, and then we'll break for lunch.
I think I have, actually. The very next slide, I would turn it over to Beth. So.
Steve Roberts.
Yeah, very quick question. Is there a reason why the yellow piece is ACT and not ACT? ACT only?
It could be. It's a very good point. It could be Actually, that could be another piece of the pie, or it could be ACT, SAT.
Either one, but
Yeah.
we shouldn't exclude them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
A lot of these visuals are just staff. You know, we're just throwing, there's multiple things that aren't on there. This is just kind of give that picture of how the state assessment now just needs to be one indicator of many.
It could be down the road, 5 years from now, that the Auburn-Washburn district, for example, they have a circle that's unique to that district with all of their options. And holy smokes, it's got 35 things that they're doing there in addition to the state assessment. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we will break for lunch and resume our meeting at 1:30. Thank you.